I'm still becoming the man that I want to be. I still have a fuckload of skills I still need to learn, which I failed to do throughout my whole life because I was too busy clubbing or something. I don't know. I just bought land, so I need to learn how to steward the land and, grow food and build the community and all of the skills that I need to learn so that when my children do come into the world, I don't have to play catch up to teach them how to be the man. They see it witnessed in the way I embody myself and how I practice. So I have to build up to have the skill set to be the example for my children so that I don't even have to teach. I can just be.
Yeah. And that's truly, building a legacy as a king in the way we put it, here on the show, because it's about integration. It's about becoming an integral man. We talk about the workshop and what we're helping men to do. And it's such a beautiful, one of the first guests we actually had on this podcast said something to me that for some reason it finally clicked, was that each time, the next generation has a child, they basically, like our mothers, for instance, are the platform that we got to rise from. And so then we create the foundation and the platform that our children get to rise from. And you have to hope that it's better than the one previous, because that's what we're doing, is building incrementally on one another. And that is, the trajectory, all the trajectory you can hope for is to make it better than the last, right? And you brought up, that you bought land and you are now learning how to steward it and even create a community on it. And one of the things I wanted to talk to you about was how important community is generally, especially when you're on your growth path, like you have been, and you probably will be on for the rest of your life, I would assume at this point. But, the people listening to this podcast or listening to the Magic Hour generally are likely on their growth path. They're looking, they're seeking, they're attempting to be better humans. And of course, the men in this workshop are obviously very actively on their growth path. So just would love to speak to how important community has been in creating accountability and holding you as you traveled through this next phase of your life.
I think a couple of things that make us unique as humans are, one, to be creative, to reinvent ourselves, to recognize that power and that ability is important. And also our ability to collaborate successfully. That's another thing that's made us as a species so successful, is being able to work together. So first, having that creative vision of what we want to build, what we want to create, how the world ought to be, and then collaborating together to make it so, to bring it to life. So yeah, I now have changed my worldview and my vision for the world and want to build it. I can only do so much myself, but together, we can really get something done. So now is the time to connect with like-minded humans. And it's such a relief to see so many lights coming on throughout the world and people starting to connect into a shared collaborative vision that is not naively egalitarian, everybody equal type thing, but everybody unique in their contribution to a complex, dynamic ecosystem of humans creating a better society. And it's possible. And if we look around the world, and all the systems that we have created previously need to change. And I would just push back a little on what you said, because you said we're building on top. I don't see it that way. I think the linear mechanical world that we've believed is the way things are for so long have allowed us to create these exploitative systems that end in landfills or end in discarding of people, resources, things. Whereas I think we need to have more of a system that embraces and transmutes energy and creates like this dynamic collaborative ecosystem that's shared, that's not on top of or building. We're not standing on the shoulders of giants. We are literally growing from within the giants. We are the giants. And so, just a different visual for me is more in sort of the permaculture, compost, garden sort of vision. I'm in love with my compost, and I see like my banana peels, my scraps. We're not building on top of them. They're actually becoming the rich, fertile soil that will set, sort of the conditions for future life.
So it's an evolution or an expansion.
Yeah.
But I understand what you're saying. Yeah. When we get into that linear mindset, it becomes the capitalist mindset, it becomes something that could be just.
Yeah. I mean, and it's just rhetoric, but rhetoric is important also.
Yeah.
Sure.
And when I think of you and community, I think of that. I think about how you would make your backyard a community garden. You're I think of that and of the sweetness of that. But I also think of how you sought out men's groups and you've gone on men's trips where you guys do deep work. And that took a lot. First of all, and not to harp on men, but it can be very hard for a man to seek out help from another man, to seek out direction. There's the funny stories of not wanting to pull over for directions before we had the iPhones, So I also think of that and the importance of that in your life, men's work and men's groups.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I was an only child. I craved connection. I felt lonely. I wanted community, but I was seeking out community members that were indulging in the same misbehaving that I was. And when I changed what I wanted for myself in the world, I had to change who my friends are. And so I started to seek those that wouldn't make me feel bad, that wouldn't belittle me, that wouldn't compete with me for some zero-sum game, that weren't inept and emasculated and weak, so that I felt safe, that weren't destructive in certain ways. And men that were leveling up, and I had to step up my game in order to be in their company. And also, when I asked for help, they were there for me, not in an ego way, but in a genuinely heart-centered way where they want me. They want the best of me because they need me as much as I need them, so that we can work together. And if anybody's not operating at their highest potential, then they're a liability. And, me too, right? I suddenly recognized that I need those men. I need them. And they're not above me because they need me. So they sort of the tension of those relationships elevate the group.
Yeah, that really hits home because it feels like for a lot of people, and I know for myself, it's that worthiness when it comes up, to say that they need me too, and really feel that is truth.
And I have something to offer them, just like they have something to offer me. Yeah,
exactly. It's a mutually beneficial relationship where we need each other, and it's symbiotic and synergistic. We can together we create something way better than we could alone. Or
it increases the stakes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And my partner is in a men's group called the Iron Container at Third Eye Meditation Lounge over at Casa de Luz. I know you're familiar with, but I know they cry together and they hold each other in a safe container to express all of their shit, and they also hold each other accountable and call each other on their shit. And I know there's many times that he leaves there and he says that he's on cloud 9 and that he wishes all men could experience this. And that's something I can't give him. That's something that he can only get in that specific container with other men. There's also things he can't give me if he didn't have that. And so it's so, so valuable.
Yeah. And not to say that there aren't men who live more in their feminine, women who live more in their masculine, but there's a masculine energy that, men are predisposed to have that, requires, they say iron sharpens iron, and to have that pushback and have that energy and to feel safe in them and their intention for you. I mean, yeah, we cry a fuckload, and we reveal all of the shadows, and it's horrifying to be vulnerable in that way. But also when you see them being the same way, you're like, wow, that's like me. That's what I have. There's so much familiarity because we're all just iterations on the same thing as humans.
And I know another big part for him was when he saw other men doing the work, it made it more attainable for him.
Yeah. Highly recommend men's groups. Very important. And hopefully, I think there will be more and more opportunities for men to get connected with those kinds of men's groups. I mean, we have outsourced that need for camaraderie and community in sports or wrestling or something like WWF. But there is a type of male bonding that can be spiritually aligned, heart-centered, loving, and also tough as nails and, definitely strong. And
yeah, I'm glad you bring that up, because I think a lot, some men listening going, I don't want to go join a group where I'm going to cry all day. That sounds terrifying and terrible. That doesn't sound like fun. And it is a small piece of what happens in those groups. But the point you brought up, Adrian, is like, this is a place where no matter however you decide to express in it, you feel safe enough there because you know the intention behind it, and you know the intention of the men that are holding that space. And that in itself is like incredibly healing. Even just being able to speak something that you maybe wouldn't have said to anyone else and let it be held by a group of men who get you and who have positive and high intentions for you.
That's right.
Can be so incredibly powerful. And before we move on, I want to just let our guys in our Awakening the King Within workshop know that we are taking questions at the end of this in just a few minutes here. So if you click on the little Q&A button somewhere on your Zoom screen, you can enter your question there. You can enter it either anonymously or under your name. And any questions you have for Adrian, we will answer in just a few minutes when we open up the Q&A session. So please add those now.
Yeah.
All right, Jay, do you want to move us on?
Yeah. So I want to share like just a little story, and then we can see where it goes. But there was a time that you were a date of mine to the wedding. And that night is so memorable for me because I apologize like 20 something times to you about, I apologize we had to park too far from the venue. I apologize it was so crowded. I apologize that they served you your water in plastic. I apologize that your ankle was broken. People were wanting pictures with you. I felt like, or as far as I remember, I was apologizing. And you stopped me at one point. You took my hand or my arm and you said, I'm enjoying myself with you. Don't like stop apologizing. And you asked me straight up right then, like, why do you feel the need to apologize so much? And it hit like that was such a touching moment because I felt that unworthiness wound like open. I apologize just for taking up space, just for like, I had to apologize that you were even with me somewhere, and that was so big of so David Data talks about how men grow by challenge, but women grow by praise, and how if you praise your woman freely,
good to know,
freely 5 times a day, how much you will see her grow and how healing that is for her worthiness wound. So I know
you are so smart.
Thank you.
You're so incredibly smart.
You just like now.
That praise is happening right here. You see it?
4 more times, Adrian. But you've always spoken to my queen. You've always spoken to my queen, which has called her forth. And it's one of the reasons why I feel so good in your presence. But I want to talk about that, about how that is a form of men leveling up, being willing to speak praise, because we live in a punishing culture. We think if we praise, they won't try as hard, or if we praise, then they've won. So I want to speak on that a little bit because you have always done that for me.
I'm glad, and you deserve it. You are absolutely incredible, intelligent, beautiful, one of my closest friends. So you deserve it, and otherwise, why would I be hanging out with you? Like I want to surround myself with people that are worthy of my presence, and you are. And so that requires that we both have to keep the standard high for each other. Yeah, I think, a lot of times in this culture, we're taught to belittle or to, put down.
It's a shadow king energy. Right,
to dominate, to control. But what happens when you build up and make the other powerful? Suddenly now you have to also. So there's a weakness, there's a laziness.
If you stay small, I can stay small.
Right.
That hits home. Maybe.
Right. And so I would surround myself with small people so that I didn't have to do any work. It was easy for me. And what a waste of time. I mean, I could feel bad about not having leveled up sooner because I did waste a good 20 years at least. But, we are infinite and it's never too late. And now's a perfect time. So.
And I just want to ask as a caveat to that, is it like, even when we spend a lot of time alone, it gets to a place where we're not in community on purpose. Like you're saying, it's like almost an extended version of that, where we're not only are we not surrounding ourselves with high, growth mindseted people, however you want to put that, right? Like people who are going to push us to our highest so that we don't have to worry about taking on that responsibility of stepping into our highest selves. But we're also just not even like, we're doing it so deeply that we're just not even fucking with other people at all. Like we just don't even want to look in the mirror at all and see where we haven't grown.
Yeah, because also with any knowledge, there's the call to change. Like when Seaspiracy came out, I kept feeling resistance to watch it because I didn't want to not eat sushi anymore. And I knew if I watched it, I was going to be called to level up, you know?
Yes, that's so true. Yeah, just like little nuanced things like that as well. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Did you have anything else you wanted to bring up on that before we move on to our little staples questions, Jade?
We have our lightning round of questions that we ask everybody on the show that I'm sure you're familiar with. And then we'll open up to the workshop, see if they have any.
By the way, can I just hold on? That picture is so nice. I feel like we're in some.
Now we're in your backyard.
This is.
That's funny.
I like it. Awkward family photos. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, Adrian. So, like we said, there's a few short questions we ask everyone who comes on the show. I know you know because you've listened to our show. And thank you, by the way, for all the praise you've given us. And thank you for sending me those cleaning supplies, which I've never gotten to tell you from your company.
Yeah. Shout out to Blue Land.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first question we ask is, if you could hug your younger self right now, what would you say?
Yeah. I'd say thank you for all the wisdom. I stay connected to my inner child because he has so much to offer me. He sends me messages through time and space to land in my adult moments. And I'm like, I always have to remember that there's messages coming. He's like, you know, be a better man, be better than your dad, be better than my dad. And I'm like, okay, got it.
I love that. Yeah.
If you could have the whole world read one book, which would it be? It's a hard one.
Oh, well, I'll just say that I'm reading a great book right now by Jamie Wheal, Recapture, the Rapture. Have you read it?
Well, I've gotten it, but I haven't started it.
It's really good.
It's the sex magic book. Is it?
I haven't gotten to that part yet,
okay.
But it's really good. He's a great writer and it's really compelling. And I think it's a handbook to, you know, level up for the future, for a better future too. So it's right on topic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jamie was really incredible. Okay. If you could whisper one phrase to everyone on the planet, what would it be?
If I could whisper
one phrase to everyone on the planet, what would it be?
Oh. Oh, my instinct is, I'm sorry.
A lot of people need to hear that.
I'm sorry. I did not know. I knew not what I was doing. I'll do better. I'll fix it all.
It reminds me of the metta meditation. I love you. Please forgive me. I'm sorry. Or not necessarily in that order, but yeah. A lot of people, when you do that and you focus it out at a stranger, it's actually in our bonus section of this workshop. It's so healing to send that out energetically because so many people just need that to hear. Yeah. So I know we normally ask, where can people find you online? But I know that you do so much work in the world. You have Contra Ventures, you have Lonely Whale. Where can people find that work and how can they get involved?
Yeah. Obviously, I actually, you could just Google me, you could find me online there, but really proud of Contra Ventures. We're building an impact fund that seeks YBM, which is yield beyond money. We want to reestablish our relationship, the appropriate relationship to money as a tool, not as a goal. And so we're investing in awesome companies and also in tools of personal transformation, as well as trying to shift our financial systems as well. So check that out. Go to docontra.ventures or at docontra.ventures.
Awesome.
Amazing. So I'm going to open up the Q&A. You ready for that?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So first off, let's see who we got.
Because you're recording it for the podcast, it's in panel mode.
Yeah, and I'll just read them to you guys because I know you're a little further from the computer, so you can't get to them as easily. All right, so this one says, how did you recognize you were in your feminine too much? And how did you begin to trust your masculine more?
That's a good question.
So I had been doing a lot of work. We've established that. A lot of breath work as well. And I was in Australia and I was doing this shamanic breath work in which I would descend through my lineage, energetic lineage, ancestral lineage. And so in that state, in that meditative state of the breath work, I was able to pass through my mother, my mother's mother, my great-grandmother, my Native American ancestry into the earth and the animals. And I bawled and I cried and I cried. I was just purging the pain, the traumas of my ancestors. And when I came out, sort of in the download, I recognized that I was connected to my female lineage, my ancestors, my female ancestors, and even the earth and the animals, like feminine, and not the masculine. It was there. I felt it energetically near, but I couldn't tap into it. And so when talking to the facilitator, she's like, you you're, very feminine. You have like a lot of feminine energy passing through you. And I recognized that for whatever reasons, growing up, not having that strong masculine role model, having a father who left me, having men who taught me how to womanize or be macho, some sort of semblance of masculinity, or were inappropriate with me sexually. Like I had a lot of dark, negative masculine modeling and ultimately not developed as in the masculine. But my feminine was quite strong. And feminine being the creative, the potential, being the infinite possibilities of life itself, I recognized that I was using that, I was tapping into that for my art, for my creativity as an actor, as a musician, as a filmmaker. And I was very, very connected into being able to dip into the chaos, into the unknown, and then like sort of manifest stuff creatively. And this is maybe a longer answer. My immature masculine, my little boy, of course, wanted to be powerful, wanted to be strong and protect myself in the world. And so when I got offered roles in Hollywood, that was my way, my little boy immature way to exploit my feminine for money, power, fame, and security, and to feel like the man. And I realized in that moment that I'd been essentially prostituting my feminine for my whole adult career in order to make myself feel like the man. And I realized, like I need to grow up. I need to be a strong adult, divine masculine, not only to protect the world, but to protect myself from myself. So
that's some extreme self-awareness and introspection.
And also these are all just stories that we're telling ourselves, right?
Yeah.
I resonated with that story. It became clear to me that through line, that narrative through line, and it feels true to me. And so I was like, oh, okay. So now I'm going to stop exploiting myself. I'm going to stop doing things just for the money, just for the power, just for the fame. And I'm going to do things that are deeply aligned with my higher self. And
that's you cultivating that divine masculine, figuring out how to stay on direction, keep the structure of where you actually want to go.
Right. Because my default was the feminine. Yeah. Like, let me just use this feminine, like shape-shifting quality to gain all the things out in the world and exploit that, as opposed to, no, let me step into my masculine and make decisions about what I'm going to do and what I'm not going to do, and take the risk to be better. And the whole world, our economic system is designed to seek and exploit the parts of us that are willing to be exploited.
Those open, fluid characteristics of creativity, which are so beautiful and important to hone. And like anyone listening to this, especially men who are hearing this and like, we think about not wanting to be in our feminine. Luckily, our last call with the men on this call from Awakening the King Within was largely about determining where you're in your feminine and where you're in your masculine, and how to be energetically agile between those two things. But it's really beautiful to hear from you, Adrian, how you were able to kind of notice where you were too deeply in your feminine, or in other words, exploiting it in some degrees. And the fact that you were able to recognize that is so huge. And I think when we get to that place, so much incredible growth and healing happens. And that's when the masculine comes in, masculine representing consciousness as well. Masculine is the one that's able to become aware of that happening in the first place, and then can create the structure needed in order to channel us to where we're actually trying to go, instead of us just being, floating around the clouds in our feminine state all the time.
Yeah, I'm not trying to reduce my feminine or like put it. I appreciate it, and I want to protect it, and I want to use it for the highest good.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So beautiful. And as you began answering that question, you talked about you were doing that breath work that was really helping you transcend and look at your lineage, and how you kind of, your feminine lineage, especially like where those energies came from for you. And that we have a question here about really where your original spiritual work was born, like how you became versed in spiritual work in the first place. And I've heard other interviews of you where you talk about your upbringing and your mother. And so maybe you can just address this question. It's, how were you first introduced to the spiritual work you are so versed in now?
Well, when I was younger, my mom was always open to different religions or different spiritual philosophies. She was an astrologer for a time. We spent some time in an ashram, probably 6 to 8 months. She was a flower child. And so I was exposed to a lot of different philosophies and ideologies. And then I got into different books, I had this fantasy that I was going to bend spoons with my mind. I was very much into the thing like magic and that sort of thing. And then meditation, curious about Buddhism, really responded well to Buddhist philosophy. And then at a certain point in my early 20s, I abandoned spiritual pursuit for the indulgences of the flesh. And I excelled at that. And it was great. Until now, of course, I have come back full circle to go back to where I veered off the path. So, yeah.
Yeah. That does definitely answer that. We're so glad though that you went through all the things, even if they were hard or not necessarily the healthiest, because they got you to here. So we're grateful.
Yeah, thank you. I survived it.
Yeah, I'm glad you survived it. Exactly. So we have a question from Mike Summers here. He says, Mercedes and Jade have talked a bit about allowing your queen to become your oracle. I think you mentioned that today too, to some degree, Adrian. And he says, with your current partner, as opposed to your previous relationships, was there any singular moment when you realized you could trust her with this role in your life? Or was this a gradual realization? And he says, can you describe this realization from your own perspective?
The masculine is about discerning choice making, to be able to choose. Feminine is anything and everything and all the things. And then the man says, no, this is it. So in order to bring all that potential into being, the masculine has to choose. And that is your opportunity to make that choice. So you get to choose who your partner is. You get to choose you. You're the one. And I'm giving myself to you, knowing that nobody's perfect, knowing that no one is going to be, you're not looking to mommy to take care of you. You're looking to a woman to serve. So once you make that choice, it becomes true, and it'll be hard, and no relationship's going to be perfect. And there's going to be shadow in her and mistrust. And she may disappoint you. She may hurt you. That may happen. But the importance is not who you choose, but to choose.
Yeah. And I think a lot of the resistance that may come from that specific situation is the feeling of she's trying to change me. Like she doesn't love me for who I already am. But it's that realization of she loves me so much that she wants me to be my highest self, and to let go of that perspective of she's trying to change me, and allow her to be the voice of God in your life, because the feminine is intuition, and she can feel when you're off course.
Yeah. And it's a dance, so the analogy that I like, I was like, and I don't know if this is relevant. We'll make it relevant. I was like a sail on a ship, and it was flapping around in the wind, and the feminine energy, the women were like just blowing through me, and I was just randomly going in any direction. But it wasn't until I pulled back on the ropes and I made that sail taut, just firm enough, that I was able to harness the energy of that woman and then go somewhere. Have a direction.
I love that.
So it's not that, they may want to change you. And I think you take a look at what they're, what's being offered, but ultimately stand firm. And if you know where you stand is appropriate, or where you're embodying your highest self, you don't have to change. But if you're not going to change, you don't need to be thrown off. If a woman's making a suggestion, you can just sit in it and let them relax. Because a lot of times we want to react,
Right.
We don't like a man just wants things to be done. So we want to try and fix it. But sometimes you just have to sit and let the wind blow you and hold the wind.
I love that. Hold the wind, fellas. All right. So what methods did you use to limit your escapisms and to become more sensitive to feeling your body? So I think he wants tangible, like any methods that come to mind. I know you talked about breath work a little bit.
Yeah, meditation, breath work, but just breath work in every moment. I don't think I was paying attention to my breath until you just said so. Yeah.
We often just hold our breath all the time.
Yeah. So
breathing into our belly.
How much throughout the day can you bring some awareness to your breath? Of course. But meditation also is great, because you start to, move your awareness, move your mind, your consciousness around the different places in your body. And you suddenly, like, if you focus enough, you'll be able to feel like the sensations on the tip of your finger or on your elbow or small point on your back. And so it is about being able to pass your awareness into your body in different places and get and feel into those sensations. Those are, yeah.
Those are great. Yeah.
And then also, recognizing, sex is like drugs. It's a powerful medicine that can become addictive because it's so much that it's not subtle at times. So if you reduce the amount of drugs you take, you start to be able to feel more of the subtlety.
Yeah. And that goes for masturbation as well. When you're releasing those chemicals, whatever way you get there, that is creating a pseudo addiction or sometimes a severe addiction. So it is something to definitely look at what your relationship to it is.
And your tolerance grows. So then you have to increase the dose. But if you reduce your tolerance, suddenly you're feeling every little bit, every little thing.
Hypersensitive. Yeah. And that is where a lot of the deliciousness that can come with that comes from, is that being able to be sensitive. All right. So we have one from Denny, and I'm going to just speak this one out loud and see what we can pull from it exactly. I'm not exactly sure what he's asking. Okay. You talked about your level of intuition and how the multiple levels of awareness were needed to extract your decisions. Did you find or extract shame from it? Or was it from a place of guilt for past transgressions, past trespasses? So I think he's asking, when you became aware about your needing to communicate with your inner intuition in order to make decisions from an integral place, did you extract any shame or guilt? And were those, did you notice that was coming from past transgression? I'm not sure how those two things relate, but does something come up for you there?
I don't know if I find guilt to be a very useful emotion.
Because it's like shame.
Yeah, it's a shame, right? And there's something disempowering about it. It's where you feel guilty, there's nothing you can do. And I don't know if I'm able to answer the question, because I don't know if
let me see if I can. So, okay, first I want to just say, and this is going to be a little bit of a pushback, but just because we just had our call and we described the difference between shame and guilt, as described actually from Mary Margrave, our intuitive, that shame is this, essentially the idea that we are somehow bad innately. When we feel shame, we actually feel that we are bad. And then when we feel guilt, or if we can differentiate the two, guilt is actually, I did something bad. And there it makes it revocable. It makes it something you can repair. You can go back and say, I'm sorry, or I fucked up, or let me change my actions in the future and not do that thing again. So let's see, with Denny asking this question, he's asking specifically about your ability to be intuitive. And then you have an awareness of how intuition is needed in order to create decision or be decisive. And then if any of these places that you may have felt guilt or shame come up in your life were, I think, dictating where you were going. Yeah. And if you said, hey, let me throw that out the window because it's bullshit.
Yeah. I mean, okay. So this is about time and space for me, right? So when you feel guilty, it's because you did something in the past bad. And you're like, damn, now that you can't change it. Intuition is being able to expand your awareness into future moments or into other people's experiences outside of yourself, so that you can feel what, might happen if you do something, so that you can make a better choice or make a different choice. So guilt is the experience of having done something, and intuition is like, I now can avoid having to be guilty because I feel that what I'm doing right now will lead me to a place where I might feel guilty about it. Whereas before, when I wasn't feeling, I would just do the thing. It would be terrible, destructive, whatever. And I wouldn't even feel bad because I wouldn't feel anything. So it was just, like bulldozing through a forest and tearing down all the trees and all that stuff. So it's like, yeah. Does that?
Yeah, I think so. So coming from, now that you can come from a place because you've tapped into your body and you've tapped into, its intelligence that also, flows through us, all of us. Now that you've tapped into intuition in order to help you make your decisions, you're not having to sort through shame and guilt in the same level as you might have allowed those things to direct your life for a long part of your life.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
That's what she said.
I think we got there together, y'all. All right. So let's see here. Ryan is asking, what's the number one resource you would recommend for men trying to enter into their king, as we call it here, or integrated self?
Yeah, I really do believe men need other men. We raise each other up, and especially the lack of masculine role models for generations, perhaps.
We've lost the initiations.
Yeah, and we're stumbling through it together, but we will do it together. So in many ways, I've had to raise myself. I've had to, from a place of unknowing, had to conjure and create those rites of passage for myself. And then now with other men, we do it for each other.
Yeah, absolutely.
So find men that you respect, that you know by how they show up, by how they express themselves, are looking to create, to serve the world and make a better world, and get with them. And those kinds of people will embrace you.
Yes. And that's sometimes it seems like a big task. And the next question that's being asked here is, how do you recommend building up the courage to join a men's group? And is there a place I can start?
Yeah. And it's hard. It is hard. When I first joined my men's group, I kept wanting to stay quiet or not contribute. And I was embarrassed and shy and scared, and not having grown up with brothers or sisters. And I was always afraid, and like being raised by a single mom, I was afraid of male attention because it was often aggressive. I didn't have the horseplay. So to be with other men that are like strong and powerful is intimidating. And I know that personally. So it can be, but stick with it and know, as we were talking about before, they need you to show up. We need you. We need you to show up. So please.
I love that. And we have on our resource list in Awakening the King Within some men's groups that we believe deeply in, because either our partners are in them, or we have talked to the men or know the men well who guide the course or guide the men's workshops. So there are
less threatening. You can do an online one where they meet on Zoom, like Connor Beaton's, or
at least to start.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. And I would just say that there's nothing more brave than being vulnerable. Like if you can truly be vulnerable and be seen in your weakness, and we all have that, right? That gives not only it's a relief to allow yourself to be vulnerable, but also it gives the other men an opportunity to show up. And we all want to feel like we have value to add in the world. We want to be of service. That's where like our true sense of purpose comes from. So when you are vulnerable and you allow other men to hold you and to show up for you, you're doing them a favor also. So it's a mutual benefit.
Absolutely. So beautiful. And it is the way that you as a man can be a light in the world of other people.
And you'll do it for others.
Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, whatever you need in order to motivate yourself, but that's such a huge motivator. Like, hey, I'm actually helping others by showing up in this workshop, in this men's group, and speaking my truth and being vulnerable. Sometimes we need to do it for others before we can love ourselves enough to do it for ourselves. So I love that you are being such a beautiful example of this too. And I'm so thankful you have decided to come on our show. I know this has been in the making for so long, and it's like, kind of, the universe is designed to have you here right in the middle of our men's workshop, because this is what we wanted to talk to you about.
Yeah.
Thank you, Adrian, for being a light.
Thank you. Yeah. Long time coming. Thank you.
Yeah. I'm so proud of the man that you've become. And I'm so thankful for everything that you're doing, and so thankful for you said it yourself, like it takes bravery. I'm so thankful for your bravery. Yeah.
Can we have lunch?
Yeah.
We're going to have lunch, catch up.
We're going to go eat pizza at a kid's birthday party.
Amazing. All right, guys. So if you've been watching this, thank you so much for joining us. And you know that our next call is coming up on Tuesday. That'll be at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And we'll send you a Zoom link out that you can catch in your email, of course. And then anyone listening on the Magic Hour podcast, you know what to do. We only grow by you guys giving us those ratings and reviews. It lights up our life whenever we see one come through. So please rate us 5 stars and send us a review. So love you guys. Thank you for being here.
Be a light.